They not as they provoke because they don't really get better thing, you understand? And now we decide and we survive them. But now the Buga they tell us say that they get Nigeria, you understand? But relax. What I like to be saying, he get the clout to couple anybody, anyone couple. You know they fear anybody. We never sleep for the past 1 week because of Tinubu tax reform bill when they send go National Assembly. Tinubu say this bill go must get through, even when governors and some other men don't come out come talk say make you withdraw this bill. Say no, say this bill must go National Assembly. May they go tackle and do you understand? Now make allude to me. Won't scatter National Assembly. I mean a Senate floor the other day.
It was a fierce contest of ideas in the Senate at Wednesday's plenary after some northern senators vehemently opposed attempts to invite tax experts into the chamber to brief lawmakers on the controversial tax reform bills. After being ruled out on 3 separate attempts to stop the impromptu exercise, the northern senators, including Senator Ali Ndume, stormed out of the chamber. They only returned after being persuaded by their colleagues.
Trouble started after the Senate leader Okpeyemi Bamidele asked the Senate to suspend its rules and allow visiting tax experts, including the chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, Zach Adedeji, into the chamber during Wednesday's plenary. The Senate leader instantly followed with Order 1B, which allows the Senate to regulate its own procedures.
The essence of this is for them to come and speak to the integrity of the tax reform bills and to also enable our colleagues ask questions.
Instantly, the first opposition came from Senator Abdul Ningi from Bauchi Central, who points out that the privilege cannot be extended to the tax experts and that they should be invited to brief the Committee on Appropriations instead.
I don't see anywhere whereby the senators should allow these people to come here and make the kind of interactions they so want. However, committees of the Senate and Appropriation can invite for the interaction of this manner.
But presiding Deputy President of the Senate, Barao Jibril, swiftly intervened, trying to impress it on Senator Ningi that the waiver being sought for the drafters of the tax reform bills is to allow them speak openly to Nigerians about the tax bills and end once and for all the contentious aspects of the proposed tax bills. He then ruled Senator Ningi out of order, admitting the motion from the Senate leader to allow the guests in.
We should also educate ourselves about the bill, and in that respect, the motion has been moved by the leader and seconded by my majority leader. Those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it.
Not satisfied, Senator Ali Ndume fired the next salvo to stop the visitors from being allowed on the grounds that the item is not listed on the order paper and as such violates Senate business rules.
Mr. President, you will have your way, but I can have my say. You can use the gavel and I will use my voice. This thing is very sensitive. Our people have been dominated by this matter.
Senator Ndume was also ruled out of order. But moments later, Ndume returned, asking the presiding officer to withdraw the use of words against him and apologize.
You sitting there to say it's rhetorics, I think it's very unfortunate and you should apologize.
It's not an offense. Nobody used that against you. In the context it was used, it wasn't used against you. It was a general statement. I therefore rule out of order.
Again, Ndume was ruled out of order, and he was seen packing his stuff to leave. He was prevailed upon to stay back, even as the Senate proceeded on the briefing by the tax reform team.
All right, then, so we were live, I think it was on Newsday yesterday, when we saw this fireworks in the Senate breakout. And, you know, the tax reform bill in itself, of course, represent a pivotal moment for Nigeria's fiscal policy, with the potential to modernize the tax system to provide relief for vulnerable populations. However, we're seeing this procedural controversies in the Senate, I believe, highlighting the need for an improved legislative transparency and the adherence to rules. I understand in a way, you know, where Senator Ndume is coming from, but however, when we look at everything that's currently happening in Nigeria, you would expect that in a situation where they're introducing this new tax reform bill, which has gotten some pushback and some criticism, you would expect that the Senate, you know, the National Assembly, would want to hear directly from the horse's mouth so that they can, you know, understand exactly how this tax reform bills actually affect, you know, the everyday citizen. So even though there's a rule in the Senate that says, oh, you know, they can't be admitted directly, I would expect that there would have been an exception just because we are at a state in this country where we really need to figure out what we're doing next. I'd like to know your thoughts, Doctor, starting with you, of course.
Okay. Well, first, let me deal with the issue that occurred yesterday at the Senate. There have been controversies over the reform of the tax ecosystem in Nigeria, particularly with the fiscal policy team, Presidential Committee on Taxation and Fiscal Policy, led by Taiwo Oyedele and also supported by Dr. Zach Adedeji, with some of the states, you know, most of the states, saying that they disagree with the reform of taxation. Now, when President Tinubu set up that committee, the basic principle is that there is a need to address issues of tax administration, tax management in this country. Because, you recall, Wale Edun, as coordinating minister of the economy, had told us severally that the issue here is not about increasing taxation to punish the people. It's about creating a more efficiency framework for tax collection and revenue collection. And I think that was the original programmatic position of the government that led to the setting up of the Taiwo Oyedele Committee. Now, the Taiwo Oyedele Committee completed its assignment and made a number of recommendations on the basis of which the president sent, you know, proposals to the National Assembly. Then there was the kickback, the pushback by the Northern Governors Forum, who said, this would affect them negatively. And the Northern Governors Forum directed senators, lawmakers in the National Assembly to kick against the bill. The second thing is that, you know, some state governors also said, no, they were against the bill and they didn't want it. Now, what you have seen here, you know, is just realpolitik between the states and the federal government. But I think also that the Tinubu administration has tried to show that it's more clever at the game. And it tried to, you know, explain the matter to the National Assembly, on the basis of which a team was sent to the National Assembly, led by, well, I don't know who led the team, represented by, you know, Zach Adedeji, chairman FIRS, that's the Federal Inland Revenue Service, Taiwo Oyedele, who, you know, spearheaded the tax reform and who knows the subject anyway, given his professional expertise, and also Tanimu Yakubu, the Director General of the Budget Office. Now they showed up in the Senate, and all this argument about northern senators saying no, Order 12 was against the rule. I think it was Ali Ndume who said that the matter was not listed in the order paper for the day. And he said it was also a violation, along with Abdul Ningi, senator, you know, saying that there has been a violation of is it section 12 or whatever, of the Senate rules. Now, the thing to note here is that both Senator Ningi and Senator Ndume, these are two northern senators who have a grouse against either the Senate itself or also, to add to it, to the Tinubu administration. But I don't want to comment further on that. That may look like getting into their politics. But for me personally, I think it's good to see that, for once, we even see these senators disagreeing, not behaving like a rubber stamp assembly and arguing over something. But what are they arguing about? I think Taiwo Oyedele, the man who led the process of reform, explained it more properly. And I would think that it's important to focus more on the intelligence that he provided, and then supported by Zak Adedeji. What did Taiwo Oyedele say? Taiwo Oyedele said, in fact, what has happened in the tax reforms that they have done is, one, to make sure that there's equity, fairness, and justice. That the poor and the vulnerable of Nigeria, if you earn between 50,000 and 70,000 naira, you will not have to pay tax. If you earn up to about 100 million, all these big people, in our society, then you have to pay up to about 25%, as is done in other jurisdictions, particularly the United States. That's one. So in other words, the reform is to help the poor. Number two, one of the four bills is saying that another look will be taken at the, the VAT distribution arrangement. The federal government used to get 15%. They are proposing the federal government should get 10%. States should get 35%. No, states should get an additional 5%, and then local governments should get 35%. Another thing is that every state should earn, in terms of VAT collection, according to the consumption of its people. That is the equity that Oyedele was talking about. In other words, sales tax is what states can collect. Sales tax, not import tax, not other taxes that are due to the federal government. In other words, this is about reform coming from a government and administration that says it is reform-minded. The ethnic angle that people have put into it, the territorial angle that people have put into it, is where the controversy comes from. And the sum of the presentation by Zak Adedeji and Taiwo Oyedele is that this is a tax reform that will help Nigerians. Now, I think it's important that the Senate, the National Assembly, takes a look at these reforms. But to take a position that they are resistant to change and that you cannot change the tax situation in Nigeria is inadvisable. And they should not play politics with tax. Taxation and tax administration haven't been a major problem in this country, even since colonial times.
Okay, so the truth is there were about 4 bills. Barring anything, the Senate will pass that tax bill. And it's as good as a done deal. Because yesterday, after all the Order 12 rule book scenario that Ali Ndume and Ningi tried to do to be able to disrupt the people coming in, and it was because the likes of Taiwo Oyedele and Zacchaeus Adedeji and the likes were coming in to the place to come and make clarification and explanation, and that's why they put that forward. So once, kudos to Bamidele, MOB, and other senators out there that stood their ground, and also Jibrin Barao, that stood his ground, because you see, you cannot have an argument in the Senate, and real dramatics personnel in that argument are not made to come and enunciate their views. It is only fair to hear all sides. So I didn't support that drama by Ndume yesterday. Yes, I know what he's talking about, the rule book. But for us to be able to get clarity as regards the tax matters, you should be able to allow the likes of them Oyedele to be able to come into the hall, and they will be grilled, and they'll be able to make their presentation. And maybe like he knew that their presentation was going to sway people yesterday, that's why he was, saying all of that to try to block it, but it was overruled by Barao. And their presentation did sway a lot of people yesterday. And that's what has happened as regards this tax, law. The 4 bills there are very clear. What are some of the components of this bill? It's going to deal a lot with corporate taxing. Yes, 15% will be taxed for profits, for corporations. But also, this tax rule is very sensitive enough to understand that business make losses. So all the minimum tax threshold that businesses are ought to pay when they make losses will not be paid. And which is a welcome development, because we keep talking about the fact that government doesn't provide for a lot for businesses, and when they have problems, even in their losses, you are haggling them with all sorts of taxes. And that's a welcome development. Secondly, he talked about the fact that the tax is one for the poor. And he was empirical in his fact. He said those that earn about 1 million threshold, which is one of the highest in Africa, will not pay taxes. So those that earn cumulatively 800,000 naira a year, plus an extra 200,000 they pay for rent, will not pay, that income tax threshold. But obviously, those that earn higher will be able to pay higher on the income tax threshold. But my grouse has always been, hope all what we collect in these taxes, we use it to subsidize life for the poor. Because that's the way it works in other countries. But in this country, the rich gets richer, they don't even pay taxes. I think the very first person that tried to have conversations about taxation in recent time was the former Minister of Finance, when the one that was, Kemi Adeosun, and she made a very startling revelation that says not up to, in a country where they say a lot of billionaires, not up to 100 people pay over 20 million naira income taxes in this country. And it was a big revelation when they made that revelation there. And we see a lot of private jets here and there and all of that. This was the same country that a leader once said, the fact that the country is growing was because there was a lot of private jets owned by Nigerians somewhere. But the truth has to be said, people were not paying their fair share in taxes. So that point now has been clarified. Also, it goes further to talk about the VAT, which is a contentious, and I get the argument from most parts, a certain part of this country. Because we have not seen a great production and consumption threshold from that part. This is the same part where we hear that some religious police destroy a lot of alcohol. And alcohol presents about 2% to the VAT. And you destroy that. So if you do not consume effectively, you cannot get your equitable share for not consuming the tax system. So it's only clear and clear. I even think, and kudos to Taiwo Idele, I might disagree with him on other things. I even think to a large extent, this will spur a great deal of consumption. So governors in these states that are not meeting the threshold of consumption will buckle up and be able to ensure they create consumption. And how can they do it easily? Tourism potentials. There are many tourism potentials in the north that has not been tapped into. I mean, I don't know why today, around the Mambela Plateau area, cable cars have not been built. They can't build resort hills and mountains around the Mambila area. That will be able to bring in a lot of influx of people, and it will bring about tourism potential. Look at the Yankari Games reserves. Look at other natural resources. So it's about spurring productivity in this area. And most importantly, he talked about harmonization of creation of new tax offices and all of that, and harmonization of the hitherto existing bills. I think for further reading, a lot of Nigerians will also go and study the bill even better. But barring any last-minute changes, it's going to go through in the Senate. And this is another win for President Tinubu. And in terms of consultation, give it to Taiwo Oyedele. He made his wide consultation. People were represented on this body. He's been at this since his administration started. And let us only see. See, any tax bill obviously will be up for reviews. If people have other considerations, they should be able to itemize this consideration and put in the review when it finally pushes on.
But many of us now don't know the content of that tax bill. So this is the opportunity for you to know everything when they're inside that tax bill, so that you can understand what they talk. This guy now can break down everything. Understand? This tax bill, they talk say now the way you consume, now you go to get VAT. See, no free meal again for the northerners. Now I made the northerners the verse. I say this tax now what you produce, that is the value of what you consume, now you go get as benefit. You understand? So next thing I make the northerners, they usually knock war. Say this tax bill must not get through. But President Tinubu say no, it is time to restructure, to reform the tax. Say for the past 10 years, they never check our tax bill. Understand? So the northerners, they provoke because they don't really get better thing. You understand? And now we survive them. But like the Buga, they tell us say that they get Nigeria. You understand? But relax. What I like Tinubu be saying, he get the clout to couple anybody, anyone couple. You know, they fear anybody.